The massive creature paced back and forth in its cage like a trapped storm. Its 6 legs moved with deadly grace across the metal floor, each step making a sound like thunder. The beast stood 12 feet tall, with skin that looked like black armor and sharp spines that glowed blue along its back. Its 6 eyes burned red in the darkness, watching everything around it with frightening intelligence. Captain Jake Morrison stood behind thick glass, studying the monster they called a Vorthak. He had seen many dangerous things in his 20 years with the Coalition Navy, but nothing like this creature. It made his skin crawl just to look at it. The beast turned its massive head toward him, and Jake felt like it was looking right into his soul. "Still giving you trouble?" asked Dr. Lisa Hayes as she walked up beside him. The scientist carried a tablet full of notes about the creature. Her face looked tired from months of trying to understand the beast. "Trouble is putting it lightly," Jake replied, not taking his eyes off the Vorthak. "This thing has tried to escape 43 times in 6 months. Each attempt gets smarter than the last. The creature they were watching had been found on a dead planet called Kepler 438b. Long ago, an alien race had made it as the perfect weapon for war. Then those aliens had died out, leaving behind only their terrible creation. The Coalition had brought the Vorthak aboard their research ship Meridian, hoping to learn its secrets before their enemies did. The beast was unlike anything they had ever seen. Plasma guns that could melt steel barely scratched its hide. Its claws could cut through reinforced metal like paper. When it roared, the sound could break glass from 50 feet away. But worst of all was its mind. The Vorthak was smart, maybe smarter than most humans. "The Zenthari tried again yesterday," Lisa said, checking her notes. "Their mind readers couldn't get through to it at all. 2 of them are still in the medical bay, unconscious." Jake nodded grimly. The Zenthari were known across the galaxy for their ability to read and control minds. If they couldn't reach the Vorthak, nothing could. "What about the Corvani Beastmasters? They ran away," Lisa said with a bitter laugh. "Can you believe it? The greatest animal trainers in known space took one look at this thing breaking their control devices and fled like scared children." The Vorthak suddenly stopped pacing and turned to stare directly at them through the glass. Its 6 eyes seemed to focus on Jake with uncomfortable intensity. The captain felt sweat run down his back despite the cool air in the observation room. "It knows we're talking about it," Jake muttered. "Of course it does," Lisa replied. "We think it understands at least 7 different alien languages, maybe more. It's been listening to everything we say for months." Lieutenant Ben Cooper joined them at the viewing window. The security chief looked even more nervous than usual around the creature. "Sir, I really think we should consider spacing this thing. Just open the airlock and be done with it." "We can't do that, Ben," Jake said firmly. "The war with the hegemony is getting worse every day. Intelligence reports say they're working on their own creature weapons. If they succeed, and we don't have an answer, human colonies will be wiped out." Ben shifted uncomfortably. "But sir, what if this thing gets loose? We've got 300 people on this ship, families, scientists, support crew. That monster could kill them all." Jake understood Ben's fear. Everyone on the ship felt it. The Vorthak was death given form, a nightmare made real. But they needed it. Humanity was fighting for survival against an enemy that outnumbered them 10 to 1. Every advantage mattered, even one as dangerous as this. "The containment field is holding," Lisa said, though she didn't sound entirely convinced. "We've reinforced it 3 times since the creature arrived. The walls are made of the strongest materials we have." As if hearing her words, the Vorthak moved to the wall of its cage and pressed one massive claw against the metal. Where it touched, the surface began to glow red-hot. The beast pulled its claw away, leaving 4 deep scratches in the supposedly indestructible wall. "How is it doing that?" Ben asked, his voice tight with fear. "We don't know," Lisa admitted. "Its claws seem to generate some kind of energy field. Every time we think we understand this creature, it shows us something new." The Vorthak moved away from the wall and lay down in the center of its cage, but its eyes never stopped watching them. Jake had the uncomfortable feeling that the beast was planning something. It had been too quiet lately, too still. That wasn't like it at all. "Sir," said Ensign Pete Adams as he hurried into the observation room. "Captain Morrison, you need to see this." Jake turned away from the creature reluctantly. "What is it, Pete?" "We just received a distress signal from the transport ship New Horizons. They're under attack by pirates near Tau Ceti. We're the closest coalition vessel." Jake felt his stomach drop. They were on a secret mission to study the Vorthak. Taking on refugees would complicate everything, but he couldn't ignore people in danger. "How many survivors?" "Unknown, sir." The signal cut out after the initial distress call. Jake looked back at the Vorthak one more time. The creature seemed to sense his attention and raised its massive head to stare at him. Those red eyes held an intelligence that made Jake's skin crawl. What was it thinking? What was it planning? "Set course for Tau Ceti," Jake ordered. "Maximum speed. And Ben, double the security around our guest. I don't want any surprises while we're dealing with this rescue." "Yes, sir," Ben replied, though he didn't look happy about it. As the Meridian changed course, Jake wondered if he was making a mistake. The Vorthak had been contained for months, but bringing civilians aboard would change everything. More people meant more chaos, more distractions. And the creature was always watching, always learning. The beast in the cage below seemed to sense the change in the ship's movement. It stood up and began pacing again, its steps more agitated than before. The blue spines along its back glowed brighter, and it made a low sound that vibrated through the metal floor. "It knows something is different," Lisa observed. "Making more notes on her tablet." "This thing knows too much," Ben muttered. "We should have left it on that dead planet where we found it." But they hadn't left it behind, and now they were stuck with the most dangerous creature in known space. A creature that no one could control, no one could tame, and no one could understand. The Vorthak had defeated every attempt to master it, with contemptuous ease. What Jake didn't know was that everything was about to change. Soon, the most feared weapon in the galaxy would meet someone who would approach it not with force or technology, but with something far more powerful. Something the creature's creators had built into its very nature, but that everyone had forgotten to try. The Meridian rushed through space toward the distress signal, carrying its deadly cargo and its unsuspecting crew toward a meeting that would change the course of the war. In its cage, the Vorthak continued to pace, its red eyes burning in the darkness, waiting for its moment to strike. But sometimes the most powerful moments come not from striking, but from sitting still and listening to a small voice that speaks without fear. The wreckage of the New Horizons floated in space like broken pieces of a child's toy. Captain Jake Morrison watched from the bridge of the Meridian as his rescue teams worked to pull survivors from the damaged transport ship. Pirates had hit the civilian vessel hard, taking everything of value before disappearing into the asteroid field. "How many survivors, Commander?" Jake asked his first officer, Tony Blake. 17 people, sir. Most of them are in shock. The pirates killed the captain and half the crew before they fled." Jake felt anger burn in his chest. Pirates were getting bolder these days, attacking civilian ships closer to coalition space. The war with the hegemony had stretched their forces thin, leaving fewer ships to patrol the trade routes. "Bring them aboard," Jake ordered. "Get medical teams to check them over. And Tony, make sure they're kept away from the restricted areas. Our mission is still classified." As the survivors came aboard the Meridian, Jake watched them from the docking bay's observation deck. They looked tired and scared, clutching whatever belongings they had managed to save. Most were traders, scientists, and colonists heading to the outer rim worlds. Normal people caught in the wrong place at the wrong time. Then he saw her. A small girl with dark hair walked beside a woman who looked like her mother. The child carried a stuffed elephant that had seen better days. While the other survivors looked around nervously at the military ship, the little girl stared at everything with wide, curious eyes. "Sir," said Lieutenant Ben Cooper as he approached Jake. "We've got a problem." One of the survivors is Dr. Amy Chen, a xenoarchaeologist. She's got high-level security clearance. Her daughter is with her. Jake looked at the woman and child again. "How high level?" High enough that she'll figure out what we're carrying if she sees the wrong thing, Ben replied. The girl is 8 years old, Katie Chen. Great, Jake muttered. A curious scientist and her child were the last things he needed on a ship carrying the galaxy's most dangerous creature. Keep them comfortable, but make sure they don't wander into areas they shouldn't see. Dr. Lisa Hayes met the survivors in the main briefing room, offering medical care and temporary quarters. Jake watched through the security cameras as she talked to each person, checking their needs and injuries. When she reached Dr. Chen and her daughter, the conversation lasted longer than the others. Mom, this ship is amazing, Katie said, her young voice carrying clearly through the speakers. It's so much bigger than our transport was. And look at all these lights and buttons. Amy Chen smiled at her daughter, the first genuine smile Jake had seen from any of the survivors. It's a military research vessel, sweetheart. Much more advanced than civilian ships. What kind of research? Katie asked, still looking around with wonder. Lisa glanced at the security camera, knowing Jake was watching. Different kinds of scientific studies, she said carefully. Nothing that would interest a little girl, but Katie tilted her head in that way children do when they're thinking hard about something. Is it dangerous research? There are a lot of security doors and guards. Jake felt his stomach tighten. The kid was sharp, maybe too sharp for their own good. He activated the comm system. Dr. Hayes, please report to the bridge when you're finished. 20 minutes later, Lisa stood in Jake's ready room looking tired. The survivors are settled in guest quarters on Deck 7. Most of them just want to get to their destinations and forget this ever happened. What about Dr. Chen and her daughter? That's more complicated, Lisa admitted. Amy Chen specializes in extinct alien civilizations. If she sees any of our research data, she'll know exactly what we found on Kepler 438b. And the daughter is incredibly curious. I've never met a child who asks so many questions. Jake rubbed his temples, feeling a headache building. How long until we can transfer them to another ship? At least 2 weeks. The nearest coalition vessel is on the far side of the sector. We're stuck with them until then. As if summoned by their conversation, the door chimed. Come in, Jake called. Amy Chen entered, holding her daughter's hand. The woman looked nervous but determined. Captain Morrison, I wanted to thank you for rescuing us. Without your ship, we would have died out there. Just doing our job, Dr. Chen, Jake replied. I'm sorry about what happened to your transport. Katie stepped forward, looking up at Jake with bright, fearless eyes. Are you really the captain? You look younger than the captains in the movies. Despite everything, Jake found himself smiling. I'm really the captain. And you're Katie, right? Yes, sir, she said politely. This is the most exciting thing that's ever happened to me. Well, except for the scary pirate part. But your ship is incredible. I've never seen so many amazing things. Amy Chen gently squeezed her daughter's hand. Katie, the captain is very busy. We shouldn't take up his time. It's all right, Jake said. Katie, what did you think was most amazing about the ship? The little girl's eyes lit up. The artificial gravity generators and the quantum drive core, and all the sealed doors with the red warning lights. What's behind those doors? Jake exchanged a quick look with Lisa. The kid had noticed everything, including the restricted areas. Those are just storage areas and maintenance spaces, nothing interesting. Katie nodded, but Jake could tell she didn't entirely believe him. Children had a way of sensing when adults weren't telling the whole truth. Captain Morrison, do you study aliens on this ship? Sometimes, Jake answered carefully. Why do you ask? Because Mom studies dead aliens and I help her sometimes. I'm really good at figuring out how alien things work. Maybe I could help you too. Amy Chen looked embarrassed. Katie, honey, I'm sure the captain has plenty of help. And we're just passengers here. Actually, Katie continued, ignoring her mother's warning look, I think you're hiding something really important. All the crew members get nervous when they walk past certain areas. And there are sounds. What kind of sounds? Lisa asked, suddenly interested. Deep sounds, like a big animal making noise. Sometimes the whole ship vibrates a little bit. Whatever, you're keeping it's alive and it's big. Jake felt his blood run cold. If an 8-year-old could figure out they were carrying something dangerous, what else might she discover? Katie, I need you to promise me something. Some areas of this ship are off limits for everyone's safety, even curious little girls. Can you promise to stay in the areas where you're allowed? Katie looked at him seriously, as if weighing his words. Is it dangerous? Very dangerous, Jake said honestly. But you're keeping it safe, right? You're not letting it hurt anyone? We're doing our best, Jake replied. Katie nodded slowly. Okay. I promise to stay where I'm supposed to. But Captain Morrison, if you ever need help with whatever it is, I'm really good with animals, even scary ones. After the Chens left, Lisa shook her head in amazement. That child is remarkable. She figured out more about our situation in one day than most adults would in a week. That's exactly what worries me, Jake said. Keep an eye on them and make sure the security on the restricted areas stays tight. The last thing we need is for that little girl to wander into the wrong place at the wrong time. But even as he spoke, Jake had an uneasy feeling that Katie Chen was going to be more involved in their mission than anyone expected. Children had a way of finding themselves in the middle of things, especially when those things were dangerous and mysterious. Down in the restricted section, the Vorthak had been unusually quiet since the new arrivals came aboard. It stood motionless. In its cage, all 6 eyes focused on something only it could sense. The creature's spines glowed softly in the darkness, and occasionally it would tilt its massive head as if listening to sounds too faint for human ears to detect. The beast had lived for centuries, and its senses were far beyond human understanding. It could detect heartbeats through metal walls, smell fear from great distances, and hear the subtle changes in a ship's rhythm when new life came aboard. Something had changed on the Meridian. Something small, curious, and completely unafraid. The Vorthak continued to listen, its ancient mind processing information in ways its creators had never intended. Soon, it would meet the source of these new sensations. And when it did, both the creature and the ship would never be the same. Katie Chen had been aboard the Meridian for 3 weeks when everything went wrong. She had kept her promise to Captain Morrison, staying in the safe areas and not asking too many questions about the restricted sections. But her curiosity never stopped growing. She noticed how the crew members walked faster when they passed certain corridors. She saw how their eyes would dart nervously toward the sealed doors with the red warning lights. On the morning of the disaster, Katie was helping her mother organize research files in the guest quarters. Dr. Amy Chen had been given permission to work on her own projects while they waited for transport to another ship. Katie liked helping with the alien artifacts and ancient writings. She was good at spotting patterns that adults missed. Mom, what do you think they're really hiding down there? Katie asked as she sorted through digital images of alien ruins. Amy looked up from her work, sighing. Katie, we've talked about this. It's not our business. Captain Morrison and his crew are doing important work for the Coalition. But what if it's something that could help us understand the aliens better? What if it's connected to your research? Before Amy could answer, the lights in their quarters flickered. Then they went out completely. Emergency lighting kicked in a moment later, casting everything in a red glow. An alarm began to wail throughout the ship, loud and urgent. Attention all crew, came Captain Morrison's voice over the comm system. We have a critical system failure in the power grid. All non-essential personnel report to emergency stations. This is not a drill. Katie felt her heart racing. She had never heard the captain sound so worried. Amy grabbed her daughter's hand. Come on, we need to get to the emergency assembly point. They left their quarters and joined other crew members. In the corridors, everyone was moving quickly but trying not to panic. Katie noticed that the security teams were all heading in the same direction, toward the restricted areas she had been wondering about for weeks. Mom, something's wrong, Katie whispered. Really wrong. Look at how scared everyone is. Amy squeezed, her daughter's hand tighter. It's going to be okay, sweetheart. The crew knows what they're doing. But Katie could see the fear in the adults' faces. This wasn't a normal emergency. Something bad was happening. Something that made even the tough military crew members look terrified. They reached the emergency assembly area, a large cargo bay where civilians were supposed to wait during crises. But Katie couldn't stop thinking about the sounds she had been hearing for weeks, the deep rumbling noises that seemed to come from the lower decks. If there was a power failure, what would happen to whatever was making those sounds? Dr. Lisa Hayes rushed into the cargo bay, her face pale and sweaty. She spoke quickly to the other civilians. Everyone needs to stay here. The ship is experiencing some technical difficulties, but we're handling the situation. What kind of technical difficulties? Asked one of the rescued passengers. Lisa hesitated. Power grid problems, nothing that can't be fixed. But Katie saw the way Lisa's hands shook as she spoke. The scientist was lying, or at least not telling the whole truth. Something much worse than power problems was happening on the ship. Dr. Hayes, Katie said, stepping forward. Are you sure everyone is safe? Lisa looked down at the little girl, and for a moment, her professional mask slipped. Katie saw real fear in the woman's eyes. Katie, I need you to stay with your mother and don't leave this area. No matter what you hear or see, don't leave this room. What might we hear or see, Kai? Katie asked. Before Lisa could answer, a sound echoed through the ship that made everyone freeze. It was a roar, but not like any animal Katie had ever heard. It was deeper, more powerful, and filled with rage. The sound seemed to come from everywhere at once, vibrating through the metal walls and floor. What was that? Amy whispered, pulling Katie closer. The roar came again, even louder this time. Katie felt it in her bones, in her chest, in the very air around her. Whatever was making that sound was huge and angry and very, very dangerous. Lisa spoke into her comm device. Captain, the civilians heard it. What do I tell them? Morrison's voice came back, tight with stress. Tell them nothing. Just keep them calm and away from the lower decks. But Katie was already moving. While the adults were focused on the comm conversation, she slipped away from her mother and toward the cargo bay door. She had to know what was happening. The sound, the fear, the way everyone was acting. It all pointed to something incredible and terrifying happening on the ship. Katie, Amy called, but her daughter was already in the corridor. Katie ran toward the restricted areas, following the sounds of shouting and alarms. The corridors were mostly empty now, with crew members, either at emergency stations or dealing with whatever crisis was unfolding. The emergency lighting made everything look like a red nightmare. She reached a section she had never seen before, where the corridors were wider and the walls looked thicker. There were blast doors here, the kind used to contain explosions or dangerous materials. Most of them were sealed tight, but one was partially open. Through the opening, Katie could see a massive room with a damaged cage in the center. The cage was built like a fortress with walls that looked like they could stop a tank. But something had torn through those walls like they were made of paper. Sparks flew from broken electrical systems, and the air smelled of burned metal and ozone. And then she saw it. The creature was unlike anything Katie had ever imagined. It stood 12 feet tall, with 6 powerful legs and skin that looked like black armor. Blue spines ran along its back, glowing with an inner light. Its head was massive, with 6 red eyes that burned like stars. This was what had been making the sound she heard at night. This was what everyone was so afraid of. The Vorthak turned its head toward the doorway, and all 6 eyes focused on Katie. She should have been terrified. She should have run screaming back to the safe areas. Instead, she found herself stepping into the room. "Hello," she said softly. The creature made a sound that was almost like a purr, but much deeper. It tilted its head, studying her with those intelligent red eyes. Katie could see something in its expression that the adults had missed. Yes, it was dangerous. Yes, it was powerful beyond imagination. But it was also sad and lonely. "You broke out of your cage," Katie observed, looking at the twisted metal. "But you're not trying to hurt anyone, are you? You're just scared." The Vorthak took a step toward her, moving with surprising grace for something so large. Katie didn't back away. She had always been good with animals, even the ones that other people feared. This creature was different from any animal she had ever met, but the sadness in its eyes was the same. Everyone's running around scared, Katie continued, her voice calm and gentle. But I don't think you want to hurt anyone. I think you just want to go home. The creature lowered its massive head until it was level with Katie's face. Its breath was warm and smelled like electricity and metal. This close, she could see that its eyes weren't just red, but had flecks of gold and silver that swirled like tiny galaxies. You're beautiful, Katie whispered. Scary, but beautiful. Behind her, she heard footsteps and shouting. The security teams had found her. But Katie didn't turn around. She kept looking at the Vorthak, and it kept looking at her. In that moment, something passed between them. Not words, not thoughts, but a deeper understanding. The creature that had defeated every attempt to control it, that had terrified the most advanced civilizations in the galaxy, was listening to an 8-year-old girl who spoke to it without fear or demands for obedience. Katie. Captain Morrison's voice echoed through the chamber. Don't move. Don't make any sudden movements. But Katie was already reaching out her small hand toward the massive creature that everyone said could never be tamed. Katie's small hand reached out toward the massive creature that towered over her. Behind her, she could hear Captain Morrison and his security team holding their breath. The whole ship seemed to wait in silence as the little girl's fingers came closer to the Vorthak's enormous head. Katie, please don't move, Morrison whispered. That thing could kill you before we could even blink. But Katie wasn't listening to the adults. She was focused completely on the creature in front of her. The Vorthak's 6 red eyes watched her hand approach, but it didn't pull away or show any signs of aggression. Instead, it seemed curious about this small human who wasn't afraid of it. Katie's fingertips touched the creature's snout, just above its mouth. The Vorthak's skin felt warm and smooth like polished stone. The creature made a soft sound, almost like a sigh. Its eyes dimmed from their usual angry red to a softer golden glow. You're not a monster, Katie said quietly. You're just lonely, aren't you? The security team behind her raised their weapons, but Morrison held up a hand to stop them. He had never seen the Vorthak act like this before. In all the months they had held the creature, it had been nothing but rage and violence. Now it was letting a child touch it willingly. Katie stepped closer to the massive beast. She reached into her pocket and pulled out her stuffed elephant, the one she carried everywhere. This is Buttons, she told the Vorthak. He's my best friend. He keeps me company when I'm scared or sad. The creature lowered its head even more, bringing its face down to Katie's level. She held up the small stuffed animal so the Vorthak could see it better. With incredible gentleness, the beast extended one of its claws and touched the elephant with just the tip. Dr. Lisa Hayes watched from the doorway, her scientific mind racing. The energy readings from the creature were completely different from anything they had recorded before. The Vorthak's aggressive patterns had vanished, replaced by something that looked almost like contentment. The neural activity is off the charts, she whispered into her comm device. But it's not hostile activity. It's like the creature is experiencing emotions we didn't know it was capable of. Katie sat down on the floor in front of the Vorthak, crossing her legs like she was having a picnic. She placed Buttons between herself and the creature. Do you want to be my friend too? She asked. The massive beast carefully folded its 6 legs and lowered itself to the floor, bringing its head close to Katie's level. It made a rumbling sound that wasn't threatening at all. Instead, it sounded almost like the purring of a giant cat. I think you've been alone for a very long time, Katie continued, her voice soft and understanding. All those people who tried to make you obey them, they didn't understand what you really needed. You don't want to be controlled. You want to be loved. Morrison exchanged glances with his officers. None of them could believe what they were seeing. The most dangerous creature in known space was acting like a gentle giant with this little girl. How was it possible? Katie reached out again and placed her hand on the Vorthak's massive snout. I know how it feels to be lonely, she said. When the pirates attacked our ship, I was so scared. But you know what helped me feel better? When people were kind to me. When they didn't treat me like I was just a problem to solve. The creature's eyes closed for a moment, as if it was thinking about her words. When it opened them again, the golden glow was even softer. It made another gentle rumbling sound and carefully moved one of its claws to rest near Katie's hand. "That's right," Katie said, smiling. "We can be friends. I won't try to make you do things you don't want to do, and you won't hurt anyone because friends don't hurt each other." Lisa stepped forward carefully, her scanner recording everything. "Katie, what you're doing is incredible. The creature's stress hormones have dropped to almost nothing. Its brain patterns show signs of bonding behavior." "Of course," Katie said matter-of-factly. "He just needed someone to talk to him nicely." Morrison found his voice again. "Katie, that thing has been trying to escape for months. It's attacked every person who tried to get close to it." Katie looked back at the captain with the simple wisdom that only children possess. "Maybe because they were trying to be its boss, instead of its friend. Would you like someone who only wanted to control you?" The Vorthak made a soft chittering sound, almost like it was agreeing with her. Katie giggled, a sound that seemed impossible in a room with the galaxy's most feared creature. "See? He understands." Amy Chen appeared in the doorway, having followed the security teams despite orders to stay in the safe area. When she saw her daughter sitting next to the massive alien beast, her face went white with terror. "Katie, honey, please come away from there." "It's okay, Mom," Katie called back. "This is my new friend. He's not scary once you get to know him." The Vorthak turned its head toward Amy, and she froze in fear, but the creature's eyes held no threat. Instead, it seemed to study her with the same gentle curiosity it had shown Katie. After a moment, it looked back at the little girl and made another soft sound. "He likes you, Mom," Katie said. "He can tell you're my family." Morrison realized he was witnessing something that would change everything they thought they knew about the Vorthak. For months, they had tried every form of technology and force to control the creature. They had brought in the galaxy's greatest experts on animal behavior and alien psychology. Nothing had worked, but a little girl with a stuffed elephant had accomplished what they all couldn't. She had found the key to the creature's heart simply by treating it with kindness and respect. "Katie," Morrison said carefully, "do you think you could ask your friend to come back to his room? We need to fix the damage from when he broke out." Katie looked up at the Vorthak. "Would you mind going back to your room? I know it's not very comfortable, but they need to make sure everyone on the ship is safe." The creature tilted its massive head, considering her request. Then, to everyone's amazement, it stood up slowly and walked toward the damaged cage. But instead of going inside, it stopped and looked back at Katie expectantly. "Oh," Katie said, understanding immediately. "You want me to come with you?" "Absolutely not," Amy said quickly.
"Katie, you are not going anywhere near that thing's cage." But Katie was already standing up, tucking buttons under her arm. "It's okay, Mom. He just doesn't want to be alone anymore. I'll stay outside the cage and talk to him." The Vorthak waited patiently as Katie walked over to stand beside it.
When she was close enough, it gently lowered its head and nudged her shoulder with its snout, the way a horse might nuzzle a favorite person. "Come on, friend," Katie said, patting the creature's side. "Let's go to your room and I'll tell you stories until they fix everything." The most feared weapon in the galaxy walked peacefully beside an 8-year-old girl, following her toward its cage like a loyal pet. The security team watched in stunned silence as the creature that had terrorized them for months became as gentle as a lamb. As they reached the damaged containment area, Katie looked up at the Vorthak one more time. "You know what I think you need," she said thoughtfully. The creature made a questioning sound, its head tilted to listen. "I think you need a name. How about Storm? You're big and powerful like a storm, but you can be gentle too." The newly named Storm made a happy rumbling sound and touched Katie's hand with the tip of one claw. In that moment, the most dangerous creature in known space found something it had been missing for centuries. A friend who saw past the monster to find the lonely soul within. News of what happened on the Meridian spread through Coalition headquarters faster than a wildfire. Within 3 days, Admiral Frank Carter himself arrived with a fleet of ships carrying the best scientists, military experts, and alien specialists the Coalition had. They all came to see the impossible thing that had happened aboard Captain Morrison's research vessel. Katie Chen sat in the observation room, watching through the reinforced glass as dozens of important people studied her friend, Storm. The Vorthak lay peacefully in his repaired cage, but his 6 eyes tracked Katie's movements wherever she went. When she pressed her hand against the glass, Storm would move closer and touch the barrier with his massive claw, right where her small hand rested. "Remarkable," said Dr. Helen Park, the Coalition's top xenobiologist. "The creature's stress levels remain at 0 as long as the child is present. The moment she leaves, anxiety indicators begin to spike." Admiral Carter was a big man with gray hair and stern eyes who had fought in more battles than most people could count. He had come expecting to see a new weapon that could win the war. Instead, he found himself watching a little girl and an alien monster who had become best friends. "Explain to me again how this happened," the Admiral said to Captain Morrison. Morrison straightened his uniform. "Sir, the child approached the creature without fear. Instead of trying to control it, she simply talked to it like a friend. The Vorthak responded immediately to her kindness. And now it obeys her commands?" "Not commands, sir," Morrison corrected. "Requests. Katie asks the creature to do things and it chooses to cooperate. There's a big difference." Katie looked up from her spot by the window. "Storm doesn't like being told what to do," she said, in her clear, young voice. "But he likes helping when someone asks nicely." Admiral Carter studied the little girl who had accomplished what his best experts couldn't. "Katie, do you understand how important this is? Your friend there could change the course of the war." "I know everyone thinks Storm is a weapon," Katie replied thoughtfully. "But he's not just a weapon, he's a person, kind of. He has feelings and thoughts. If you want him to help you, you have to treat him right." Dr. Park leaned forward with interest. "What do you mean, treat him right?" Katie walked over to the communication panel that connected to Storm's chamber. "Storm, can you hear me?" The Vorthak immediately stood up and moved to the speaker, making a gentle rumbling sound that everyone had learned meant, "Yes." "These people want to know if you'd be willing to help protect human colonies from bad aliens," Katie said into the microphone. "But only if you want to. Nobody's going to force you." Storm tilted his massive head, considering her words. Then he made a series of different sounds. Short rumbles, longer growls, and clicking noises that almost sounded like language. "What's he saying?" asked one of the scientists. Katie listened carefully to Storm's sounds. Over the past weeks, she had learned to understand many of his vocalizations. "He says he'll help, but only if humans promise not to create more creatures like him. He doesn't want other beings to be alone and scared the way he was." The room fell silent. The implications were staggering. The Vorthak wasn't just intelligent, it had moral opinions about genetic engineering and the creation of biological weapons. Admiral Carter spoke into his comm device. "Get me a direct line to Coalition Command, Priority Alpha." While the Admiral made his calls, Dr. Park continued studying the interaction between Katie and Storm. "Katie, how did you know the creature was lonely? What made you think to approach it with friendship instead of fear?" Katie shrugged, the way children do when they think the answer should be obvious. "He reminded me of the scared animals back home. When something is mean and angry all the time, it's usually because it's hurt or lonely. Mom taught me that." Amy Chen, who had been quietly watching from the corner, smiled at her daughter. "Katie's always been good with animals. She has a gift for understanding them." "It's more than a gift," Dr. Park said. "What she's done here is revolutionary. We've been approaching alien contact all wrong. We've been trying to dominate and control instead of communicate and befriend." 2 weeks later, the first reports came in from the outer colonies. Hegemony forces had launched a massive attack using their own bioweapons, creatures similar to Storm but twisted with rage and hate. The colony of New Terra was under siege, its defenses crumbling under the assault of alien monsters. Katie sat with Storm in his chamber, which had been redesigned to be more comfortable and less like a prison. She had convinced the engineers to add soft surfaces, better lighting, and even some simple toys that Storm seemed to enjoy. "Storm," she said seriously, "there are people in danger. Children like me. The bad aliens are using creatures like you to hurt them. Storm's eyes glowed, brighter, and he made an angry sound. Katie had learned that he hated the idea of creatures being used to harm innocent people. Would you be willing to go help them? Captain Morrison says they need someone strong like you to protect the colony. Storm moved closer to Katie and gently touched her shoulder with one claw. He made a questioning sound. You're asking if I'll come with you? Katie interpreted. I can't go to the fighting, Storm, I'm too young. But I'll be here when you come back, I promise. Storm considered this, then made a decisive rumbling sound that meant agreement. The mission to New Terra became the stuff of legend. Storm arrived with a coalition strike force and immediately engaged the hegemony bioweapons. But instead of simply fighting them, Storm did something unexpected. He communicated with the enemy creatures using sounds and body language that only another bioweapon could understand. The enemy creatures had been conditioned to attack everything in sight. But Storm's presence confused them. Here was one of their own kind who wasn't filled with rage and pain. One by one, the attacking beasts stopped fighting and began to listen to Storm's strange, peaceful sounds. By the end of the battle, 3 of the enemy bioweapons had switched sides entirely. They followed Storm back to coalition ships, seeking the same thing he had found: companionship and understanding instead of endless violence. Katie was waiting when Storm returned to the Meridian. She hugged his massive leg as he rumbled happily, glad to be home. Behind him came the 3 new creatures, nervous and uncertain, but drawn by the same gentle presence that had calmed Storm. Looks like you made some new friends, Katie said, smiling up at Storm. The Vorthak made a pleased sound and gestured toward the newcomers with one claw. Then he looked down at Katie with an expression that clearly asked for her help. You want me to talk to them too? Katie understood immediately. To help them feel safe like you do? Storm nodded his great head, and Katie walked over to the 3 new creatures. They were smaller than Storm, but still formidable, and clearly frightened by their new surroundings. Hello, Katie said in the same gentle voice she had used with Storm months ago. My name is Katie. You don't have to be scared anymore. Nobody here wants to hurt you. One of the creatures, with silver spines instead of blue ones, made a soft whimpering sound. Katie recognized the loneliness and fear immediately. Storm told you about friendship, didn't he? She said. About how much better it feels to be loved, instead of just used as a weapon. The war began to change after that. More hegemony bioweapons defected when they encountered Storm and his growing family of reformed creatures. Katie worked with coalition scientists to develop new protocols for approaching dangerous aliens, not with force or technology, but with patience, respect, and genuine care. The little girl who had simply asked a monster to sit had started a revolution in how humans related to alien life. And Storm, the creature that had obeyed no one, had found something worth obeying after all. Not commands or orders, but the simple request of a friend who saw past his fearsome exterior to the gentle soul within. The galaxy would never be the same, all because one 8-year-old girl understood that even the most dangerous creatures just wanted to be loved.